All right, all right. I know our good Mayor A.C. Warden will like that coming from our homeboy, Brother Al Green out of Memphis, Tennessee. But I just didn't just choose that song really in part because I'm from Memphis. I think about me standing here today. There was a time in my life I would not been able to say, here I am, baby. I think about my wife up there who liked that song as well. That's for you, baby. That being from the Dixon Home Projects in North Memphis, and it's truly an honor to follow behind a great man like our Mayor Warden, and I talk about him in this speech as well because he has been a part of the work that I've been doing over the years. But growing up in the Dixon Home Projects in North Memphis, when I talk about not seeing myself standing here before you today, I think about the game of spades that we like to play so often. In spades, 4 aces is a pretty good hand. In poker, 4 aces is a pretty good hand. But in life, 4 aces is at risk of 12 times more likely to attempt suicide, 60 to 70% more likely to use drugs and alcohol. I think about the fact that I may be today the only high school dropout standing on this stage. I may be one that may have only been the one to ever use drugs, smoked weed in my life. I may be the only one went home mad and punched a hole in the wall. But I'm here to tell you today, it's not what's wrong, it's yet what happened to me. So let me tell you about what happened in my days growing up in the Dixon Home Projects. I grew up being molested from the age of 5 years old to about 7 years old that I can remember. I seen one of my best friends shot in front of me at the age of 14. The next year, I seen another one of my friends shot in the head, laid dead in our projects, in our community. The following year, from that, about 16 years old, a bunch of gang members at our school got to fighting. I was one of the people that they chose to say that you was running with these guys. And they locked me up in jail facing aggravated assault. And they told me, since you 15 going on 16, you're going to be bound over to the big jail. And so I'm sitting there 3 days in that jail cell until some people began to come forth and say, he wasn't the one that hit me. He wasn't the one that pulled the gun. But how many of you know that traumatic experience still had an impact on my life? And many times, as I go even now down to the juvenile court, and one of the things that really changed my life, the mayor just said something that when he left politics, that was like the best thing that ever happened to him. And when I was a pastor here for the last proud 3 years up until March of last year in our community where I took the position as senior pastor at Union Grove Baptist Church, I got in a position, but I was out of my purpose. And what brought me back to my purpose was in March, they said, Charlie, we need you to come down to juvenile court and speak to these young people because they are getting out of control, they're fighting, and different things are happening. So I get down to juvenile court. And I get ready to get on this elevator, and I'm getting ready to go up on the elevator, and that's the same elevator because I went into darkness that I got off when I was 15 years old when they told me they was bounding me over to the big jail. So when I get up on the floor, I look out the door, and the same cell I sat there in for 3 days was right there, and that's all I saw. So I turned to these young men that was there in the room, and I went over to them, and I get ready to sit down with them, and I told them young men, I said, man, let me tell y'all something. There's nothing wrong with you. It's what happened to you. And I began to tell them what happened to me and how I came up in there. And something happened that day that changed my life and a lot of the work that I've been doing over the past few years when it comes to addressing adverse childhood experience. I said to that first young man, I said, now, son, tell me what happened to you. He said, Pastor, Coach, you don't remember me? I said, remember you? He said, last summer I was on your basketball team. He said, when y'all pastors came together in the community, I was one of those young men. And it hit me because I was pastoring. I wasn't the coach. I made my brother and another young man the coach of that team. And so I was not involved with this young man as I was prior years when I began to do some work around infant mortality and teen pregnancy, working with our Mayor A.C. Warden, who put it in place and saw the work that we were doing in that community. And that young man said, Pastor, I said, man, tell me what happened to you. And he said, Pastor, when I was 8 years old, they killed my daddy here in Frazier, and he died in my arms. He said, when I was 12 years old, I was walking down the street, Pastor, in Frazier, and they shot my friend right there and there. He said, I want to get those boys. And I said, young man, tell me, who is your role model? Who is you looking up to? And he pointed over to the young man that was his charge partner who actually got him locked up in jail. He said, that's my role model. It convicted my heart. I went back to my church that night and wrote my letter of resignation and told them I have to get back into the community. I got to do this work full time. We have to do something to address our children that are out here dying in our community. And so over the years, I've been doing this work for almost 15 to 20 years. I know back when we started in 2008 with the mirror around teen pregnancy, we've seen infant mortality around 16.9 per 1,000 babies dying in the Fraser community. Some of it says larger than some third world countries. And the mayor began to work with us and put in place an infant mortality, a baby store inside of our church that allowed for those parents to come into our church. And as long as they got their nurturing parenting class, we went and knocked on doors. If they dropped out of school, we got them back in school. They got their GED. Some of them went on to college, and some of them are doing great today. And we've seen infant mortality drop to under 10 per 1,000 babies dying in our community due to their work. And I thank you, Mayor A.C. Warden, for that vision, because it took that fact that we knew that it was going to take more than just the pastors doing it, more than just the parents doing it, more than just the politicians doing it. So God had blessed me in 2013 to write a book, How to Become More Visible, Vocal, and Valuable to Your Community, due to a lot of the work working with the Mirror and others. And so we said, how can we make our community better? We can do three things. We can begin to communicate, collaborate, and connect with the police, the pastors, the politicians, the parents, the principals, the proprietors, and the partners to bring unity in our community. That unity we began to see even over the last 2 years. I heard the young lady, the director, talking about earlier, when you have these facts, you better make sure your facts is right. And so in juvenile court, we had 700 plus kids in our neighborhood alone going to jail for the top 10 incidents in Shelby County, locked up for stealing a bag of tater chips when they just was hungry and needed something to eat. But when we came into the knowledge, thanks to Dr. Athel Stewart, who you'll be hearing from tomorrow, began to educate us on what adverse childhood experience was and the impact that it's had. She said, Charlie, you all been doing the work, but look at this evidence and research behind the work that you need to know when you're talking to these policymakers and to the judges. So one day, I, with my bold self, in the church that I was in, was Union Grove Baptist Church, a historical church in our community. I know the mayor know it. We had a young man who was the pastor there for 40 years. He marched with Dr. King, Reverend James E. Smith, marched with Dr. King. And here I am now standing in his seat when I'm watching in his office, my office, some video of when he was walking with Dr. King in 1968. And now here I am going out and getting in the car, riding the beat with our colonel in our community to tell you that we have changed and time have came forth. That deserve a hand right there. In riding on that beat with that colonel, we began to say, Charlie, how can we do something different? So the colonel called the district attorney, and we was able to get a district attorney to work with us to put a prosecutor into our community in that neighborhood. And also juvenile court put a juvenile court prosecutor person in that neighborhood. And they began to come with us into functions and hanging out in the community. And we've seen the youth arrest rate drop 78% from 700 kids to 200 and some kids that year. So the work that I do is for the future youth to stand before you, no matter where they came from. And I thank God I went back and got my GED. I opened me a business. I was in business some 12 years, but I was very smart because I married a woman with her MBA. But to stand here to say to the future generations that you can stand in your state capitol one day, following up behind your mirror, who you would never thought you can stand in this spot to say, here I am, baby. Come and take me, because see, the enemy, what the devil meant for my bad, God turned it around for my good. So the work that you all are doing in the communities and doing throughout this state, I'm telling you, we are seeing change. I feel the momentum. I'm excited that we were able to partner with the Rotary Family Youth Initiative. The Rotary Club was able to get the Rotary Club started in our community, which I'm co-founder of that club, in a community that they said, man, we'll never get into Fraser to open the Rotary Club. But now we are working throughout the state of Mississippi and Tennessee, making an impact. where we're focusing on grassroots in the churches. Since I've been trained in October, and I see some of the people in here I was trained with in Knoxville, and since I've been trained with them, been able to train over 450 individuals in our city on adverse childhood experience inside of churches and on the ground, who are now helping to form evening reporting centers out of their churches, because our mayor stood up and said, we're going to decrease the number of beds in our detention center. So we as a community are going to have to do more to get our children. So they have a model now. They have a model to look at our children and say, it's not what's wrong, yet what happened. So continue to do the work that you're doing, continue to make the impact, and continue to tell your babies when you go home, here I am, baby. Thank you.